Hello everyone, this is Andrew Sparks again with the Real Think blog. And this is the first official episode. Today I'm going to be talking about Seneca and a collection of his works called On the Shortness of Life. So On the Shortness of Life, at least the way it's organized in this particular book, is it's 3 different letters that Seneca had written to different people. One of them is a friend, Paulinus. Another one is a letter that he wrote to his mom, whose name was Helvia, and he was actually exiled, which was pretty close to death as far as a penalty back in the day in ancient Rome. So to be exiled is pretty nasty. So he wrote a letter to his mother, talking about why it's not so bad in his eyes that he was exiled, and also the final letter was called On Tranquility of Mind, written to his friend Serenus, which is a pretty sweet name. I mean, Serenus, serene, tranquility of mind. I don't know, maybe did that on purpose, but I thought that was pretty cool, pretty interesting. And just the first letter to Paulinus, I'm going to be talking about that a little bit, because I think there's a few points in there where Seneca has some really great pieces of wisdom that really spoke to me, and I think could also maybe help you out in case you're hitting some sort of roadblock that you feel in your life. And the first letter is actually called On the Shortness of Life, so the book is just named after that first letter, and Seneca is talking about how a lot of people complain that life is short and it's kind of over before they know it, and they don't know where all those years went. They figure, you live around 80 years. I think that's about the life expectancy nowadays. And back in ancient Rome, if you weren't, if you weren't assassinated or if you survived any of the plagues that they had, then you could probably expect to live about 80 years as well. So Seneca saw all these people who looked old, but he said they didn't really live for 80 years. They existed for 80 years, but they didn't really live for 80 years. And the distinction there is a lot of people, especially in the circle that Seneca was running in, where it's a lot of high-powered statesmen, business people. Think senators and think people that had a whole bunch of lands that gave them a lot of wealth when everything was based in like an agricultural economy. And there's a lot of people who outwardly had pretty much everything you could want in life, but ultimately didn't really live very much for themselves. So they would get all sorts of honors, they would get all sorts of money, but that was stuff that they would either use to show off to someone else, or they were acquiring it without really thinking of why they were acquiring it. And I think that applies to a lot of what we're dealing with today, where we're surrounded by material wealth, and a lot of people are chasing after it. But the underlying motives, why do they want wealth? Why do they want these external expressions of wealth? That kind of gets lost in the mix, and that fundamental question isn't asked as often as it should be, if it's asked at all. And one example that Seneca shared that I thought was really fascinating is Augustus Caesar, who in his lifetime was declared a god. So, Seneca is basically talking about a god. And Augustus Caesar really wanted free time. And here's this man who everyone thought was a god and had godlike powers, but ultimately was not free to live his life as he wanted. And Seneca talks about different letters of Augustus Caesar that he had read, where Caesar talks about how he can't really take any vacations or take any free time. He doesn't really have any leisure. So he consoles himself by thinking about free time. So this really rang true to me because I hear a lot of people talk about how much they hate their jobs. They feel like they're kind of stuck behind a computer, and they might not even be able to make it to a vacation. Either they're too busy or they just can't afford it or whatever. And so they think about sitting on a sandy beach, drinking a margarita, and that kind of consoles them and gets them through the day. Well, Caesar Augustus was facing the same sort of issue, and he was the most powerful man in the known world at the time that Seneca was writing. So it's pretty amazing, and really should make you think, like, what is this all about? What is it that I really value in life? And just to quote from Seneca here, again, he's talking about Caesar Augustus Caesar. I think it goes either way. I don't really know what the right way is. So, but Augustus so longed for leisure, and as his hopes and thoughts dwelt on that, he found relief for his labors. This was the prayer of the man who could grant the prayers of mankind. So again, just going back to that idea of this person with a godlike power in his lifetime was in a certain way powerless. He had all the worldly power he could want, all the wealth he could want, pretty much anything he could get at the snap of a finger, except for free time, which is pretty powerful if you think about it. And so it got me thinking too about some experiences in my own life where there were times where I really thought what I wanted was wealth. I thought if I could get a certain amount of money, I would be all set. I'd be good to go, and I wouldn't have a care in the world. At first, it was kind of this more obscure concept of I want to be rich. And then I realized, well, that's not really practical, so let me set certain goals. And then I realized, as I would think about this, it wasn't really satisfying. It wasn't really satisfying to think about just like this huge lump of money. And what I realized is that I really want freedom. I would really appreciate the freedom to do things that I want to do, to make contributions that I want to make, to do things that I find interesting, to hang out and spend time with people that I find interesting. And so it took me a really long time to learn that lesson. I think I'm still learning it in a lot of ways, but I'm getting there. And I think in a lot of ways that's what Seneca is talking about in his first letter too. And a lot of it is, think about what you want and why you want it. So I'm really interested to hear what is it that you think you want, why do you want it, and how do you plan to get there. So again, this is Andrew Sparks coming at you with the Real Think vlog and the first official episode. I'm super psyched to send this out, so looking forward to talking with you all. Later.